Okay, well, I think it's almost 4 o'clock, so we're going to get started. So just to welcome all the participants to our national webinar, which is on the topic of how to position yourself to open up doors. And I just wanted to introduce myself very briefly, and then I'll introduce you to the other panellists. My name's Susan Pincus, and I'm a careers professional with the College of Law. And I provide a range of career services to PLT students and also to alumni. And I also run webinars for undergraduate law students as well. So I'm very excited and fortunate to be joined by 3 professionals today, each with their own unique background and expertise, who will discuss how you can take control of your job search. Also, how you can overcome obstacles and challenges, which are an inevitable part of the journey, and how you can best position yourself for opportunities. So at the end of the session, you'll come away, hopefully, with a clear understanding of these areas, the state of the job market now and obviously post-COVID, as much as we know, and the in-demand roles, the skill set and the mindset that employers are looking for, roles that are suited for law graduates, and how to prepare yourself to grab those opportunities. So just before I introduce you to the 3 panellists, a little bit of housekeeping. If you could just leave your questions to the end of the webinar, that would be appreciated. You can type them into the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen. Please don't use chat, and then we'll answer those questions at the end. If we do run out of time, I don't think we should, I don't think we will, but we will then get back to you with the answers because we'll have a listing of all those questions. So the session is also being recorded for those people that want to access this at a later date. So let's go to the panellists. We've got Pauline Carrafa, who is the Assistant Director of Enforcement for South Australia and Western Australia with the ACCC. They just joined the role recently in around February, that's right?
That's right, yep.
Just before COVID.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
No, that's okay, Susan.
Yep. We've got Jason, who is a property lawyer with a lot of experience in the commercial law area, as well as Ravi, who works as a legal recruitment consultant with Gatehouse Legal. So what I'll do is I'll pass you over, maybe Pauline, if you could just start and provide us with a little bit of an overview of your career to date, even a couple of highlights, and then we'll move on to Ravi.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Pauline. As Suzanne said, I'm currently an Assistant Director in the Enforcement Division of the ACCC's South Australia, Western Australia branch. And I think this has got to be one of the highlights of my career, Susan. It's only been that I've been working at the ACCC since February, but it's a great organisation with a lot of committed people, and what we do is we regulate the consumer. We're the federal regulator for consumer issues and practice under the Competition Consumer Act and the Australian Consumer Law. I think in terms of my career, I've had a what some people would call a non-linear career path, and I've worked in the public sector in regulation. I've worked in the university sector itself for a Vice-Chancellor at Swinburne, and then higher education regulation subsequently. And I've also worked across small, medium and large corporate law firms, specifically in litigation and in particular building and infrastructure litigation. And I've navigated in my career I think the recession, the global financial crisis, and COVID-19. And I can say that you live through those experiences, and you work through them, and you can work through them and move to the next stage in your career. So just wanted to let people know that and give them some positive thoughts moving forward. That's pretty much all I've got to say at the moment, except maybe with my legal career, the part of my career where I worked in commercial law, I started off in a very, very small boutique practice where I managed my own files, and from there, after a couple of years of experience, worked my way up through a mid-tier firm, and then a very large national top-tier firms. So you can also do that in your career, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks, Pauline. That's great. And we'll probably talk a lot more about your experiences as well, and the differences between those areas throughout the session.
Sure, absolutely.
Ravi, over to you.
Thanks, Susan, and thanks for the introduction. So as Susan said, I'm a legal recruitment consultant with Gatehouse Legal Recruitment here in Melbourne. And we basically specialise in legal recruitment services for both in-house private practice and also government sectors as well. So anything from Gatehouse as a company, we do everything from legal support work. So that includes paralegals, legal assistants, general managers, executive assistants of the like, all the way through to lawyers and then through to partners as well. So we've got quite a wide range of opportunities for people that are looking. We mainly service Melbourne and some of Sydney, and if we're able to, we'll also attempt at servicing the rest of the country, but our options are limited sometimes. But Melbourne is where we have most of our presence at the moment. With me, I've got somewhat of an interesting background. It's a bit different to what Pauline has. So I come from a sales and marketing background. Where I guess fell into legal is I actually started my education in university wanting to become a lawyer, but soon realised that it probably wasn't for me. But I've always, even as a kid, I always had a passion to follow the law. But I've always enjoyed working with people and helping people. And that's where I kind of wanted to mix the two together. And I found this, and I've been doing it now for almost 2 years, and it's great. I think one of the highlights, or a continuing highlight, I should say, of my career is being able to help change people's lives, and help them find the roles that they desire to work in, and see everyone smile. So, I guess that's a bit about me. But I think throughout the course of tonight, I'll be able to answer some questions and go a bit more into what we do and how all this has impacted everyone.
Okay, that's great, Ravi. Thanks for that introduction. Over to you, Jason.
Thank you, Susan. I, as you mentioned before, I'm a property lawyer predominantly in my 5th year in practice. So I started out my legal career in 2015, studied a Bachelor of Business and Law here at La Trobe University in Melbourne. Before my admission, I was actually working in a quasi-legal role in-house at a major retailer, where I was doing all kinds of things from, reviewing Australian consumer law claims to dealing with privacy issues and contract issues as well, and even going to attend tribunals on behalf of the retailer. So then I started my legal career out in a small suburban firm in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, where I was doing a bit of property law, a bit of commercial law, a bit of pretty much anything. A big highlight of my career so far was actually having the opportunity to be in the instructing solicitor in a Supreme Court matter in my first year. And we were successful. So I'm very happy about that. I then made a move into an insurance litigation firm in the city, a very different area of law, but I thought I was early enough to give it a crack and see what would come of it. After deciding it probably wasn't going to be the right place for me, I managed to work my way into a large top-tier law firm working in retail and commercial leasing and a bit of corporate due diligence. I guess an interesting anecdote of that is that I actually had a clerkship interview at that particular firm, and I was politely told that it would not happen. And 4 years later, I'm walking in the door. So it's, a bit like what Pauline had said earlier. There are certain ways to get to where you want to be. So in terms of the current situation as it is now, I'm actually working on a casual basis in a firm specialising in food law, which is completely not my area of expertise. But what I have found is that a lot of the skills I've learnt in my prior roles have actually transferred really well into helping me in this role. So that's in terms of career-wise. And in a voluntary capacity, I'm actually also pretty heavily involved in the Law Institute of Victoria. There I represent young lawyers in the eastern suburbs and also the suburban representative on the executive at the Law Institute. So for me, this role is mainly around helping young lawyers finding their feet in a really competitive legal environment, and also giving an opportunity to network and to seek job opportunities and that sort of thing. So for me, that's a real passion. And, obviously you can see how many people are online at the moment. It's quite competitive out there. And I guess if there's ways that I can help or we can help as a panel, then, definitely I hope that we can get something out of that today.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for doing the introductions. I can't believe the wealth and the breadth of experience that you've all got. So it's going to be really useful for everyone to kind of be able to draw off that. I thought maybe just to kick off, Ravi, I'm sure that it's on everyone's mind, as Jason mentioned, about the market at the moment being highly competitive. And then on top of that, we've got this whole challenge with COVID. Perhaps you can reflect on what's happening in the market from a recruitment perspective. Tell us a little bit about what areas are maybe in demand. How about we just start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess from the outset, I think when Scott Morrison kind of, announced that we were all going to go into a form of lockdown and everyone started panic buying and all that kind of things, I guess the result of a lot of that was that a lot of law firms also started to, close their offices and start sending people home. And, I think a lot of us are still at home in most states, working from home and also putting on hiring freezes, which obviously put a lot of people in situations that they couldn't get out of. But also we saw quite a lot of redundancies as well throughout the last few months. Now, I guess the last couple of weeks, I think 4 weeks, we're starting to see a little, light at the end of the tunnel with some smaller firms and also some in-house organisations starting to recruit again, which is obviously a really good sign for everyone. But I guess the problem that we're still having is that, there's a far more greater problem where we can't seem to put all this to rest. It seems to like it's getting worse before it gets any better. So what we're seeing is that the area of property law, the area of, say, insolvency and restructuring and litigation is probably, and also construction as well, probably the three key areas that we will see a big increase in work happening over the next, for the next 12 to 18 months, really. Especially in construction, I think, being able to pump a lot of money back into our economy is probably going to be through that. And obviously a flow-on effect from that is property law. It's going to be a bit of work. So hopefully, Jason, we'll be able to find you something soon to get back into it. And also the areas of insolvency and restructuring, you'll probably seen on the news, a lot of companies are going under and going into liquidation, and just recently, I don't think the deal's gone through yet, but Virgin, are having a bit of a restructure. And we're seeing big companies like Target closing down. And, names that are household names for us normally are closing down. So that in that space of insolvency and restructuring, there's going to be a lot of work coming as well. So I think for people who are looking for, I guess for students or for, PLT students who are looking to decide, what does this mean for me, with COVID and opportunities that are currently available, I think people should focus on those areas because it's going to be booming over the next few months. And getting a good understanding and a good idea of that area of law will help you find something, even if it means starting from the bottom and learning everything from scratch. It may not necessarily be the area of law that you want to practice in, but I can assure you that there will be a lot of work involved in those areas in the coming months.
Okay, so what would you say to individuals that perhaps might not have as much interest in those areas and they're perhaps interested in maybe the community sector? Are you kind of saying, therefore, that people should have an open mind? It doesn't necessarily matter where you start?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is hard to, I guess, do something that you don't want to necessarily do, but you do need to have an open mind in this current climate. We can't always, I guess, beggars can't be choosers, and we can't always have everything the way we want at the beginning. But it may mean that you may need to take a step back in your career, maybe a year or two, if you do want to step into what you eventually want to do. But keeping an open mind at the moment is quite important because that's what will get you through this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in, Susan, because that's absolutely true. And every time there's been, one of these big major events, but even personal events, like I know there are going to be people who will have kids and personal events in their life, which will mean they'll need to detour from their sort of chosen path. Keeping an open mind and keeping your ideas flexible is really important. I just want to emphasize what Ravi said, that that's important in your entire career. So I would encourage, and you take away from every opportunity that you take on, you take away skills, even sometimes skills in, navigating an environment that you may not want to work in, that may not work out the way you want to do. You still learn from those experiences, and you learn how to manage that and manage yourself, and you learn what you like and what you don't like. So I just want to second what Ravi said. I think it's very important to keep an open mind.
That's a really good point, because also sometimes you might have an idea about an area that you're interested in and it might not be what you thought it was. And often you can change, and that's all part of it. So perhaps, Pauline, just a question with you. When you were talking about and giving an overview of your career, tell us how your career kind of panned out. Would you say that you had a fairly like a structured approach where you followed your goals? I'm thinking
No, not at all. If you were to ask my mother, apart from being a complete, I was a very, very dedicated student as I was growing up. So that's one thing that was consistent, and that's remained consistent throughout my career. But the thing that I wanted to be when I was growing up was a teacher. So I don't know where that went, because I didn't ever become a formal teacher, but I feel as if I've contributed to people's learning throughout my life. And I've also had this connection in my career to higher education and higher learning, and worked in sort of an allied role. I've never taught in university, but you can't help but say that I have got a passion for learning, and I think that's something that's consistently held throughout my career. But absolutely not, Susan. I started off with one direction and moved in. It was like stepping stones in a botanical garden. I never knew what I specifically wanted to be, but I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew what my life sort of what I wanted to do, what I was committed to. And so in what I've done, I've been committed to it. Does that help?
That's really good. I think that's important, particularly now when, as you were saying before, that careers aren't necessarily going in a linear fashion anymore. Things are very, very different in terms of the route and the way we go. Jason, would you say that's true for you as well with your career to date? Did you always want to kind of go into property law?
To be honest with you, I know exactly how competitive it can be once you get through, well, first of all, getting through law school, getting through your PLT, and then just starting out in your career. I applied to all different manner of fields within the law when I first was admitted. And it just so happened that, this particular firm that I got to go to was the one that stuck. Had a few different interviews. I did some networking, but this was the one that gave me the start, and it was broader content, that I was learning. It wasn't just property law, just conveyancing. It was all kinds of disputes. It was corporate law work. It was commercial law work. I dealt with the privacy law matter, which was the one that I mentioned before, going into the Supreme Court. Completely thrown in the deep end as someone who had no idea what they were doing. But I guess, now that I've been working in it for a while, it's something that I really enjoy. I like that sort of corporate side of things, commercial side of things, and the property side. I know a lot of people who've got, passions for criminal law or family law, very different areas, of course. And I think you have to have different sort of mental fortitude in some of those to deal with some of the complexities that come with that. So, I guess, as Ravi said, beggars can't be choosers. When you're dealing with a competitive environment, just get your foot in the door is the best thing I would say. Find somewhere, get a bit of experience. You're much more employable after a year or two of, working in the law, as against being someone, just starting out. So I definitely think if an opportunity presents itself, go for it.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good advice. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the skill set and the mindset that employers are looking for. So maybe, Ravi, you can kick off with that and tell us a little bit about what makes someone stand out in your mind. So what are the types of things that you look for in terms of skill set, knowledge, even like some of those attributes as well?
So I also wanted to add, I forgot to mention, one of the more developing areas of law is also family law. Sorry, Jason, you triggered my mind. Thank you. That's also another area of law that we'll see a lot of growth in the next few months. So just wanted to flag that. Look, I guess it comes down to it's different for everyone. It's different for government. It's different for in-house, and it's very much different for private practice. But I think the one of the main things that really stand out for employers is being or knowing that particular area of law that you are doing is what you're looking to do for the rest of your career. Obviously, starting out, you're not sure what you want to do because there's so much thrown at you at university. You do civil procedure, you do commercial litigation. There's so much that you do that you're in this situation where you're like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. So it's important to know from the outset what you want to specialize in, because no law firm really would like to see a generalist. If the worst thing that you can do for yourself is when someone asks you, tell me a little bit about your career, and you're applying to be a personal injury lawyer doing TAC work, for example, you don't want to be telling someone, my current practice, I'm doing 10% TAC work, 30% work in wills and estates, and 50% in property law, because you're applying for a role that's predominantly in that area, and you need to know exactly what it is that you want to do. So that's very important. In terms of attributes and skills, when you're going to an interview, it's important to prepare and know what you need to be talking about. You need to know about the firm. You need to know about the role. and you need to know what you're going to say. So it's kind of like mapping it all out before you go, right? You don't want to sound like a robot and sound like someone that's, done all their research, which is great, like, to know everything, but you also want to make sure that you talk about the points and show your confidence, and also show that you're, that you're resilient, you can do the work. It's important to know if you're in that area of, say, for example, the example I've been using is obviously personal injury. It's important to know the ins and outs of that particular area of law, and just really, it's about selling yourself, really. That's what's important. But you got to back it up when you get in there. You got to be able to, you got to be prepared to back up your talk. It's just as simple as that. So, confidence, being a subject matter expert, and also it's important that you keep an open mind, even if you know everything about what you need to know. It's always important to know that we're always continuously learning, even as people, every single day. So keeping an open mind, being confident and being prepared are very important for everyone to have.
Can I add something to that as well, Susan? Because one of the things I agree with Ravi. I think at the beginning of your career, being a content matter expert's really important. But I've changed content. So what is it, and why have I been able to change from working in a university regulator to now consumer law area? And I think there are some other things that I think when you're looking at law firms and you're looking at progression within the legal sector, I agree. I think you need to be a content matter expert. But if you're thinking long term in your career trajectory, there are other skills that and particularly in the government, there are other skills that people will look at too, and that is your management skills, your leadership skills, your team building skills, your technical skills. So where you may not have a subject matter expertise in an area, you may have technical skills in, say, in my case, litigation, that's been consistent throughout my career. So it depends on the level of the stage of your career where you're working at, and what the role is requiring of you, because there comes a point in your career where your management skills and your leadership skills are almost more important than your specific subject matter skills. And I think it's important to know that as well. So while your subject matter skills are things that you need to be building in the early part of your career, you need to be thinking in the future where other skills will be important. And in the legal profession, higher up through the ranks, it's your networking skills as well as your management skills. It's because you're going to be spending most of your time in the more senior roles in a law firm actually building your client base. So your ability to communicate with people and build and sustain your networks are almost going to be more important than your technical subject matter skills. But at the beginning, I agree with you. But think not just for now, think 5 years, 10 years down the track, because if you are, you'll be at your kind of leaps and bounds ahead of others.
And the other thing, when you
go on.
The more, and thanks for that, Caroline, because the more senior you get, your responsibilities are bigger, and for you as well in the government sector, public sector, but also in the private practice sector. You're also supervising and mentoring junior solicitors and mid-level solicitors, and also from a private practice point of view, the client service skills and also the networking skills will become a part of your requirements as a lawyer in that particular firm. Some law firms don't have that requirement, but some law firms do have the requirement that you have to do business development and bring work in. Because the work that's on the table is just simply not going to be enough to keep everyone going. So yeah, and that's right. So, and that's what's important, to be able to, I know networking sometimes can be somewhat of a daunting process a
dirty word, yes.
In order to meet people, but it's really about just starting the conversation. And you don't have to start off going, hey, can I be your lawyer? It's, it's about, talking about, I don't know, the weekend, or talking about, how your family is, or how you're getting through COVID, or anything like that.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a very
And I imagine that a lot of people even listening in today, when they might be starting out in their career, that they're not going to have that, obviously, that in-depth subject matter expertise. So some of the softer skills and transferable skills then kick in and are really important. So they're things like, communication and teamwork and problem solving, time management. So would they be skills that you would all look for when you've even done recruitment? I'm sorry, Jason and Pauline. Yeah.
Yes.
I certainly look for that when I've been involved in recruitment. In both in all government sort of roles and even in the corporate sector, and I'm looking not just for the stellar sort of CV, because I think that it's great that people are going out and doing extracurricular work, but sometimes you see these CVs where people have been leading. They've been involved in leading a team of people, McDonald's, or even in the surf life-saving clubs, and I look for that, because that you really need to work as a team in my every career point. It's the teamwork and contributing to the team and being part of a team that's almost more important for longevity than being a brilliant technical expert, because some people might bring brilliant technical expertise, other people might bring really.
Oops. Oh, sorry, Pauline. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You cut out just that last bit.
Sorry. There are some people that bring great detail skills, and it's the team. The strength of the work really is about the strength of the team operating in its strengths.
Can I also point out one other thing, actually, and I think it's more prevalent now that we're in the midst of COVID, is that don't discount your ability to use technology and computers. That's a really key part, because you're using one every day. I had a story about someone who I knew who's principal at the law firm where she started at, couldn't quite pin what was wrong with her boss's office the first day she walked in there. And as it turned out, he doesn't use a computer, and got his secretary to print out everything for him. That's just not going to cut it in this day and age. And I've found numerous times where my skills, knowing how my way around a computer, has actually helped in terms of dealing with a project that the team was working on, that was able to significantly contribute to getting stuff done quicker, more efficiently, looking more professional when, you're getting a document across to, the other side of a matter. So yeah, I guess that's another key point. The communication and being able to use technology is really important in this day and age.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really critical one. That's great. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the types of roles that people should be applying for now. So that would include like current students that are doing their PLT. It might be uni students, but also people maybe that have finished their PLT and that they're looking for graduate positions. So maybe, Ravi, you might even be able to just give us some suggestions which roles should we be looking at, and where do students find those roles? Is it all through advertised search, or is it through the hidden market? Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's a bit of a mixed bag as to how people should really approach this. It is quite difficult at the moment. I'm not going to lie. It's I'm having the issue myself. My wife is actually a PLT student at the College of Law, and she's even finding it hard to find a placement work at the moment, because a lot of places are obviously either not taking anyone on or just not recruiting at all. But there certainly is ways to find work. At this moment, a lot of it will come down to your own networking skills. And really being able to form those important relationships with people. Putting yourself out there is very important, especially as a student. At the moment, look for if you're looking to get into top tier private practice or even mid tier private practice, a lot of the firms are currently advertising for their summer clerkships as well. That's a good way to get started for people who are still finishing off their degree. That's a good option. Some firms, when you complete a successful summer clerkship, they may offer you a position to start the following year once you graduate, and then do your graduate year with that firm. So instead of instead of looking for work, you'll do your graduate training and everything with them. And then there's obviously the other way, which is you look for work and do your PLTs at places like college. For people who have already finished, it's really about getting yourself out there and making yourself known, because in this climate, the inexperienced individuals or the inexperienced lawyers, there's not a lot of work around for people. And the problem is that a lot of firms, when they see that you've either been admitted or you've completed your PLTs, they don't want to take people on who are like that as paralegals or legal assistants, because there's a requirement or a void that needs to be filled that will require them to stay in that role for 1, 2, 3 years. And there's not many lawyers out there would want to continue as a legal support staff once they've been admitted as a lawyer in the Supreme Court. So, but if you're someone that is willing to do a bit of hard work for a few years and be a legal assistant or be a paralegal for 2 or 3 years, they may look at you. And then we find that a lot of paralegals and a lot of legal assistants are given the responsibility of running files or running matters, even for their lawyers, obviously with supervision and all the legal requirements in place. But it builds your foundation and it builds your experience to then look for a first or a second year. Because at that point, you might be as skilled as a second year solicitor, and you might have enough skills to apply for a second year solicitor position because of the skills that you've obtained prior to admission. So, and I should say that you should never discount your experience that you've gained prior to admission. It's very important. Some people tend to disagree, but I am a big firm advocate for people who have that pre-admission experience, because we find that a lot of paralegals and a lot of legal assistants have better research skills than any other solicitors around. So in this current climate, yes, there are jobs being advertised on Seek, on LinkedIn, but a lot of the jobs that are being advertised, they're not making decisions very soon. Some of them are holding off to see how this all plays out and what that means for their organisation or for their law firm. Especially with Victoria, we're still a long way away from coming out of COVID. And we don't know who's going to actually survive, what businesses are going to survive this outbreak. And, the toll that it's actually taken on people for at least another few months. So, yeah, I guess we got to be a bit patient and a bit resilient, but it's important that you use this time to form relationships. And if there's a particular firm that you want to work for, you need to look at that particular practice area, and you need to research your practice area, and then you need to look at who leads that particular practice area at that firm. And then it's about you reaching out to them, making yourself known. I know it's probably hard to catch up for a coffee at the moment, obviously with all the restrictions in place, but even something like this, a Zoom or a Skype, where you have a quick chat with them, you can ask for 15 minutes out of their day, and leave them with a memory that will live with them forever about you. It doesn't have to be about your legal career. It could be about something extraordinary that you did last weekend, or the fact that you're both support the same football team or something like that. Anything that may help you remember them when the time comes.
So you think it's okay then to actually reach out to people? So would you do that through LinkedIn? Would you do it by picking up the phone, via email? What do you think is kind of the best way? Because, that is quite a big deal for some people that might not feel so comfortable doing that.
Yeah, like we said earlier, networking's not the greatest thing to do, but I think it's important because it shows confidence, and it shows that you're willing to take that extra step to better yourself as a lawyer. It's a good start before you even show what you're capable of. And the other thing is that particular partner or whoever it is that you contact will appreciate the fact that you chose them out of all the 76,000 or 80,000 lawyers that there are in Victoria, for example. So you got nothing to lose. The worst thing that can happen is they'll say no. And move on to the next one. It's all about trying.
Yeah.
Case in point, the position that I'm now in, I got as a result of a contact through the Law Institute of Victoria. Through someone in the executive, there was some work done by them. The lawyer who's now hired me, he reached out to that person and said, this is great work you've done. You posted this article in the Law Institute Journal. Are you looking for some work? I need a lawyer. They said, no, but I know someone who is. And they contacted me, put me in touch. I had a phone call, and a week later I was, I had a job again, which in these sort of times when, you got a mortgage to pay and all this sort of thing, it's really important. So, and that all came about purely because I knew somebody. As Ravi said, that initial networking stuff, it starts from now. You need to build that up over time. It's not something that happens, overnight. And I've got to know these sort of people from over a long period of time for this to I guess, go my way.
No, that's really great, Jace. That's really, really wise advice there as well. Tell us, in terms of what other things students and graduates can be doing as well. You could talk about even through the LIV, what opportunities there might be there to get involved. And also just generally, what other things should people be doing to position themselves? Should they be doing any specialist online courses? What areas might be useful in the technology space or in the AI space? I suppose I'd kind of really appreciate your advice and perspective on that.
Yeah, sure. Look, there's a few things you can do. First of all, in terms of Law Institute of Victoria, I know that, the other law societies around the country will probably have similar mentoring type programs where you can shadow a judge or shadow a lawyer or barrister to be able to learn from them, even just being in and around it and hearing the lingo and that sort of thing. Even that gives you a leg up just to understand how things work. And I think the fact that, you have something there to put on your CV at an early stage is really important. Another key way that I was able to get interviews when I had just been admitted was actually attending through to my local law association networking and CPD, or continuing professional development dinner. And at that meeting, they said, anybody put their hand up if you're a young lawyer, you're here for the first time sort of thing. And I thought, well, I was terrified because there's a room full of lawyers. But I put my hand up and I introduced myself and who I was. And I said that I was looking for work because I'd just been admitted. And I had someone come up to me later on that evening and said, I'm actually looking for a graduate. Would you like to come for an interview next week? So, there's great opportunities that you've got there to be able to do that. It's all about who you know sometimes. Yes, there's job boards that you can see. There's Seek. There's going to people like Ravi, who can help in terms of, trying to find work. But I also think that attending your local suburban or regional, if you're from the country, to attend those law associations, you've got another sort of established network already there that you can pretty seamlessly fit into. And, always looking to try and help people in that aspect. So, I think it's really important to be involved in that. In terms of things like doing short courses and that sort of thing, I know College of Law offers some additional courses as well.
As I'm doing a plug for the College of Law here, but
I was not paid to say that. But yeah, you can try and upskill, try and learn, but I think there's no substitute for experience. I was actually told on my first day as a lawyer, they said, "Oh, you did a PLT course, didn't you?" I said, "Yes." They said, forget everything they told you. I apologize, Susan. That's not what you want to hear. But he did say to me, he said, forget that. I'm going to teach you what you need to know how to be a lawyer. Right? And that's that sort of old school mentality, I guess.
That you've learned at uni.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But no, it was an interesting thought because what I found was doing my PLT, I had learnt as much, in terms of the background knowledge, and then, actually putting that into practice, was something that I was then able to do, because I had that background knowledge already.
Yeah. I'm just kind of conscious because I just thought that I might even just open up the questions a little bit earlier. So if people want to start writing their questions now into the Q&A box, that would be great. I noticed I've just got 2 questions from chat, so I'll incorporate those into the questions. But I suppose also wanted to talk about dealing with that knockbacks. And you've touched on that as well. So having that kind of resilience and having that grit and determination. And what would your advice be around that, particularly in this climate?
Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I recall applying for a job once for one department, and I had started in that organisation. And I applied for a second role and got a knockback on the second role. It really isn't something that people should take personally. You will get a million knockbacks for every successful attempt at being employed that you get. So that's my advice.
So true. So true. Anything, Jason, from your experience?
Look, as I mentioned before, I was knocked back by a firm who I ended up working for. So be resilient about it. Again, like Pauline said, don't take it personally. It isn't a personal thing. It's just, it wasn't your time, right? I was so convinced, when I was studying and I was applying for clerkships, I was so convinced I'd get a clerkship and I'd get straight into a grad role, and it just didn't happen, and that's the reality for most people. So I guess, keep going, right? You'll learn plenty wherever you go. And if you really want to get to a certain place, then work towards it. Find ways to, learn, take on files that, go into the area of law that you're interested in. Really ask the partner to get involved in more of that. And eventually you will be able to get where you want to be. But yeah, the knockbacks will happen. There'll be plenty of them. You just got to keep going.
Okay. So kind of in summary, just some of the themes that have come out from this discussion and your really valuable advice. So it's around the importance of perhaps finding a mentor and the importance of having those informal networks and channels. It's around, that passion for learning and that always wanting to kind of improve yourself as well and learn. Also about taking advantage of even looking into becoming a member and getting involved through something like the LIV, looking at suburban law firms as well, not just kind of focusing on some of the top tier law firms, looking outside even traditional pathways, particularly like Pauline in your career trajectory as well. And the importance of building those relationships and connections, and also having a flexible approach so that you are able to change direction and go on a detour and still get to where you want to be eventually. Anything else there before I hand over to the questions?
Building on soft skills. So this is the skills that you can build on all the time. Drafting skill. There's a technical skills. Drafting skills, but things that show that you have resilience. Things that show that you're adaptable. They're the sort of things that you can skills that you can cultivate doing activities and work outside of your employment even.
I mean, I love that what you said before about the stellar CV, and that not everyone does is not as lucky to have a stellar CV.
No.
It's about those other experiences as well, the life experiences, and maybe where things haven't gone. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, sorry, Ravi.
Right, going off on what Pauline said about the CV, I think you mentioned McDonald's and things like that earlier, Pauline. I think it's important to put things that sometimes things that you think may not be relevant to the CV will turn out to be things that are relevant. Like, for example, clubs that you've been a part of, the fact that you worked at McDonald's, that's awesome, because some of the best client service skills that you can come up with, because 10 minutes, you can have 10 different personalities when you're working at McDonald's, and that's especially when you're in the law. You're in some cases you're dealing with people's money, and they'll basically say, "This is what I want. You're going to do it, and I'm paying you to do it." And you can have different personalities, so that's important. But I also think things like hobbies and things like that are very important. I was once on a panel with the LIV. And one of my fellow panelists was telling us about how she got her first job, which she's now been in for, I think, about 5-6 years. Anyway, she was saying that the first few minutes or 10, 20 minutes of the interview didn't go as planned, and she wasn't really feeling great on the inside. And then the solicitor that was interviewing her, who happened to be the principal solicitor, saw that she was a classical pianist, that she played classical piano, and so did that solicitor. And all of a sudden, they got talking, and she still to this day believes that what really got her the job was the fact that she had those skills that come with being a classical pianist, and just being an all-round good person is very important. So, yeah, it would be important to also have on your CV.
I like that too. I like the showing that human side of things, really critical. The questions are coming in fast and furious, so look at them. All right, so let me just go up to the top here. All right, so thank you for your advice about the booming areas of law. Do you have any tips for building your understanding of an area of law if you haven't already studied or experienced much of it?
So I've done that recently. When I started at the ACCC, and I'm still learning. Consumer law is a totally different area of law than what I've done before, and the way to learn an area of law that you've never dealt with before is, I think, immersion. You need to read. I remember the advice of the very first partner I worked for. He said, "There are your files. There's about 30 files on the shelf." He said, "Read them." And that has been the best advice, and I've taken that advice on through that. Read it, read the precedents, read the cases. If you're in the firm, read the decisions that have been made. And then when you're working on a matter, ask plenty of questions and reflect on what you've read and see how you would apply it in a real life scenario. So it's really going above and beyond the call of duty to actually learn an area that you've never worked in before. Of course, there's going to be overlap, but it's read the file, read the case law.
That's great advice. I'm going to just move on. So I will be finishing my degree in my 50s. Is this going to be a help or a hindrance? So I don't know, maybe Ravi, do you want to answer that one on more mature graduates?
Yep. So it's neither a hindrance or an advantage. There's no real two words to how it would look, but I think the one thing that you need to spend your time doing is, first of all, see how valuable it is, because you're becoming a second career lawyer. It's going to be interesting for you to know how much of your previous career can you bring over into your new career, is one thing that you need to sit down and really think about. It's not going to be a hindrance, but it's going to be about who's going to give you a shot. With the I guess the bigger firms throughout the country, a lot of them take people on, one day with the hope of them becoming partners or just going through that slow career progression. Again, it's going to be there's no space for discrimination for anyone in the workplace. Age is just a number, but you just need to really think about exactly what you want to do, because there's no time for you to probably chop and change, because there's going to come a time where you probably want to hang up the boots and say, okay, I've enjoyed my life, now I need to travel or something like that. So it's about, it comes down to, again, networking and really getting to know people. And, it might mean that you start off like what Jason's doing at the moment, doing casual work. Or if, another thing is working for barristers. I think, doing work or, shadowing barristers, I think is very good, because you learn certain litigation skills. Obviously that only works if you want to be a litigator. But volunteering from even from now, if you haven't finished a degree, go and volunteer, go work for free. I know it's probably not in line with the Fair Work policy, but you're the one who wants to get the experience. It's added experience for you. And then when it comes to time that you actually need to find full-time work and be admitted, you might have those skills built up over time, along with your first career, that you can bring over and find something.
Yeah, absolutely. So very much around those transferable skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Showcasing them. Just another question here. This one is for Ravi. How much importance do law firms place on the university you have attended? Is there a class system in place?
Look, it really depends on, sometimes it's dependent on the firm. Sometimes it's also dependent on that partner. Some partners don't really mind what you've achieved, because some people don't do well in exams, and your academic transcript isn't really a reflection of who you always are. It does show some sort of reflection of who you are, but it's not the entire picture. But there are some universities that, basically you can't submit your application without your transcript. And if you've attended a university that's not in their top 5 or something, you kind of get put down to the bottom of the list, which is unfortunate, but it's just how they've always worked. So in short, it just depends on the firm. And mainly that's really with the top tier firms.
Yeah, and that is disappointing if that is still the case in the practice. Yeah, and you would ask yourself, would you want to be working with that firm anyway? Yeah. Another question for you, Ravi. I'm interested to understand how recruiters operate now, as I've made lots of attempts to reach out to recruiters, asked to meet with a recruiter to discuss opportunities, and none of the recruiters I've contacted seem interested to having a quick phone call, having a quick meeting. Is this a landscape of how recruitment organisations operate now? So perhaps you could just explain your stance there.
Certainly not at Gatehouse. So you guys are always welcome to book in a time to speak with us. We are always here to help you. And, we spend a lot of our time building relationships, and part of building relationships is also about having those quick phone calls or having those quick meetings. No one's ever too busy. You can always find the time to do something. When you ask people, even in their normal life, oh, did you go to the gym today? And they said, no, I didn't I was too busy. Well, I woke up at 6 and I went to the gym. You woke up at 7. So it's an hour you spent sleeping and an hour I didn't. So in short, there is time. And no, that's not how the recruitment organisations operate. Certainly not us. So look, feel free to get in touch with me, and, I'd love to help you out in every way I can. If I can't, I'll tell you. And if I can, I'll go to the ends of the earth to try and help you.
Okay, Ravi, you might get about 80 phone calls tomorrow. So be gentle and kind. Moving on, what do you think about moving from the city to the country? What are the impacts career-wise?
I can answer this one if you guys... Yeah. The great thing about working in a country firm is that you're a part of a team of maybe 5 or 6, and you become someone that takes everything that comes through the door. But what it also allows you to do is, as a country solicitor, is run matters from start to finish. Okay, so working in the city, working in the big firms, you only become exposed to part of files unless you're far more experienced. But what impact it makes on your career is that you learn really quickly. You get thrown in the deep end, and then it sets you up if you do want to move to the city. It sets you up to then be far ahead of the other applicants, because you're able to basically accept the position, sit down and get working, and not have to be supervised or be trained. So there's no setback in working in the country. I don't believe.
That can be a challenge in reverse. So if you're in a large law firm and you start off in a large law firm, sorry, that's my cat. The challenge will be to learn how to manage a file yourself and see the holistic view of the matter. Sorry about that. And see a holistic view of the matter when you haven't never run a file before. I think it's important that you learn those skills, but you go out of your way to do a small matter yourself if you can, even under direction, to learn how to run a file, because it's really the difference between something this big and something this big is just scale. It's not scale and just the parties involved. So I think if you are working in a large firm, you should try and get that file management skill if you can.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what both Pauline and Ravi have said. My experience in talking to people who have worked both in the city and the country is that they're exposed to a lot more, a lot earlier. I talked to one country lawyer recently who was working in the city and went out to the country, and within weeks in her first year, was dealing with matters in court by herself, not unsupervised, but close enough to unsupervised. Just those opportunities, I think, come up a lot quicker for people working out in the country. I don't think, like Ravi said, it would make too much of a difference, but you definitely get exposed to different work, that's for sure.
Okay, we're going to probably have to just move a little bit quicker with the answers, because there's still about another 18 questions. So someone has written here a suggestion, which is really good. Don't forget networking with barristers. Whilst they might not give you a job, they have both the subject knowledge and to impart, and will introduce you to their instructing solicitors who might be employing early career lawyers. So I think someone mentioned that before about...
shadowing barristers, great idea.
Barristers, yeah.
It works if you're wanting to do litigation, really. It won't assist you that much in other matters, but if you're wanting to be a litigator, then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There seems to be a questioning around this, the cold call approach. What's the best way to approach a practitioner? And someone else has also asked that question in terms of, in terms of, like, how would you put a letter together? What would you put in that letter if you were approaching a partner?
I wouldn't put letters together. I just think that you probably want to leave that as your last resort. Writing an email. I think the most important thing for you is to be persistent and just keep calling.
Really? So you'd say pick up the phone.
Pick up the phone and call. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think especially senior lawyers tend to be extremely busy all the time. And so they've probably got enough time to pick up the phone and have a 5-minute chat, but probably don't have the time to sift through their emails, find yours and respond to it. So that's potentially a better option in that respect. Yeah.
You want to make sure that the first 30 seconds, want to plan out the first 30 seconds of your call before you even make the call, and really understand 3 or 4 important standout key features about yourself to gain their attention. Because us as humans, we have a switch where we can switch off pretty quickly if we're not interested. So it's important that you use the first 30 seconds to really grab their attention, because that call will then last for half an hour, 40 minutes. If you
ramble. Someone said in the chat, quite funny, when do you kind of then become a nuisance and a stalker? I suppose you've rung twice and left messages and you don't hear back, maybe it's time to back off, I would say.
Yeah, don't keep jumping on that.
No.
If it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. So be it.
don't put a calendar invite in for 3 o'clock every day to call them. Probably, once a week or once a fortnight or something like that. That might be the situation where they remember you. Oh, it's that stalker. They've applied for my job.
Not a good thing to be remembered for.
I'll speak to that person just so that they can stop bothering me.
But maybe one of the things that you could do is, if you are going to one of these industry groups, industry associations, and you happen to get into a conversation with someone that you think you might want to learn from, maybe one of the things you could do is take the opportunity kind of then and there to ask whether that person might be interested in doing some mentoring or catching up every so often as a mentor, and most people are willing to do that. I mean, I loved being a mentor to a few people early on, and then when you ring up, then you've got to kind of a handle, because you can say, "Oh, I met you at X, and I really do want to take up, I don't want to take up that opportunity as a mentoree if you're available," and then that's an easier conversation.
That's good. How do you compensate for a bad academic record? I think we kind of did touch on that before, that results aren't everything, although they are still very important. There's no denying that, and particularly for some organisations. What would you say about that? Maybe Jason, you...
Yeah. In terms of your academic records, unfortunately, it does follow you. I still have, even sort of 5 years in, especially bigger firms, I find, still look at your academics. Having said that, it's not all doom and gloom. As I said before, I think there's no substitute for experience. If you can get into, places like community legal service centres, that sort of thing, to volunteer in that respect. Maybe smaller firms may be a better option for you. And as you've heard from all of us tonight, you've potentially got more options there in terms of your learning as well. And you never know where those opportunities might take you. Me personally, I applied for 20, 30 clerkships. I got 2 interviews, and only because of people who I knew, and got nothing out of it. And yet I still managed to work in a top tier law firm. So there are options. It may just take you a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Good advice. Next question is about how an overseas qualified legal practitioner who doesn't have legal experience in Australia secures a job. Any tips for that?
I think it's extremely hard, especially if you're not from a Commonwealth country, migrating to Australia. Because when you've come here, you need to go back to university and complete the compulsory units. And then obviously, depending on the experience, you'll have to do a certain portion of the PLTs as well. But I think it's just like starting off as a graduate, really. It's not easy, but again, it depends on how long you've practiced overseas. There are obviously very transferable experience that you can bring with you, but direct legal experience is probably not going to be enough, only because the law is different in every country. You'll have the ability to pick work up, but unfortunately to be able to run matters and things like that, and being an overseas qualified lawyer, you'll need to be supervised for the years as well. But yeah, the important thing is to know that it's not easy. Best tip is you just got to stay put and just be patient and just apply really and get yourself out there and try and look for something. But don't discount your experience, but just bear in mind that not all of it will be relevant to Australia.
Okay, thanks very much, Ravi. I think we've talked about this. My question is, do you have any specific advice for latecomers to the profession? I'm in my late 20s and competing with university graduates. What can make me stand out if I didn't go to a university in Australia and I'm trying to start my career? I finished my PLT right prior to COVID. So I think we have covered that, that question. Ravi, you said that firms want to know that applicants are wanting to work in a particular area of law for the long haul. What would you suggest for those of us taking positions that we're not truly passionate about as a method to get to get your foot in the door and start building experience because of the current COVID job market? That's a really good question.
Yeah, look, I think with that, the best thing for you to do is if you're going to be taking on an area of law that you're not exactly what you want to do, it's important to stay doing that for a couple of years. The reason behind it is because you can then either you stay in the same firm or you choose to go somewhere else where it's a multidisciplinary firm or area or something like that, where you can do what you've been doing for the last few years, but also then use your spare time or if you've come to an agreement with that firm where you slowly transition into that other area of law that you've always wanted to do. I guess one thing is to be an expert in that particular area that you've started off in, to get your foot in the door, to keep your knowledge up to date with what you want to do, but also keeping an eye out for different firms that will be able to give you that opportunity to transition to that area. You might end up having a practice where it's 50% what you were doing and 50% what you want to do going forward. So, yeah, I think that's probably the best approach to have.
Right. And if someone was to ask you, what are your long-term plans, what would you say? That was another question. Yeah.
Look, I don't know if I should be saying it this way, but you got to be honest. Sometimes your honesty in an interview may cost you the job. Someone may come in and say, look, I ultimately want to become a criminal lawyer, but I can't find a job, so that's why I'm applying for this. Or, I ultimately, want to go in-house and I'm applying for a commercial lawyer job. And you say, what's your 5-year career plan? I want to be in-house in 4 years. That could probably be the reason why you won't get a call back saying you're not successful in the position, because a lot of firms have a long-term goal to keep people on. But you probably want to answer that question by saying, look, I've been doing this area of law. I want to improve more, and I want to get to know this subject area better and be the best lawyer I can in that area. And then who knows, maybe one day I might end up somewhere else, in-house or something like that. But you want to make sure that you don't jeopardize yourself when you're trying to tell people that this is not necessarily what I want to do.
Right. Okay. I've just got another question around gaps in your resume of 6 months or more. How much of a hurdle is this as a graduate, and how can you overcome that, I suppose, in terms of if you asked about it?
Well, I took 2 months. I was lucky actually, and only took 2 months to find a role after finishing my PLT. So 6 months really isn't that out of the ordinary, I wouldn't say.
No, and people travel sometimes for a year.
Yeah.
And we recruited someone in my previous role who'd been travelling for a year and had done odd jobs even while they were overseas. It's not. You just need to explain. You have to have an answer ready for what you did. I think it can be positive sometimes that you've taken time off. And if it's because you haven't found work in the current climate, I think people will also understand that. But maybe you might need to be ready to answer questions around what you were doing during that period. Were you doing some volunteer work? Were you doing some extra study? I think you need to have an answer ready, whatever that answer is. But it isn't unusual at all. I agree with Jason.
No, absolutely. There's a really good question here. What is your advice in achieving that holy grail of a balanced life when you're a graduate lawyer who is at the same time trying to obtain as much experience as possible in your first months, years of your legal career? What a great question. That's a hard one. I'll throw it over to you. Secret.
Oh, no.
Well, I think the first point is you've got to realise that when you go into the law, it's not 9 till 5. It's just not going to happen. It really doesn't matter what is on your contract. It's just a matter of, can you get your work done every day? I often, in my first year, would only get 5 minutes with the partner every day, and that would usually be at around 5:30 after all the secretaries had gone home, and that's when my day would start. So, you know, you got to expect to do some longer hours. The bigger the firm, the more hours you'll do. I think, Ravi, you'd probably agree with me on that one.
Can I just add, it's not just law firms. There's a perception that if you're working in the public service that you work 9 to 5. That's an ill-founded perception. It's not real. You need to be able to work, well, not every day, but there are going to be times where, you know, you're going to be running a matter. If, you know, in my current firm, we recently ran a hearing in our area, and people were working to 1 a.m. to get submissions and things through to the judge. So it just happens. It's part of work. But I think you've got to look at balance laterally, because you might be doing that for a couple of weeks and then you might need to kind of be on the bench for a little while. If you were always doing that every minute of the day, you might want to question whether that's what you really want to do.
Yeah. That's a very realistic though question. Is really, really important for your mental health and well-being.
There are, to be honest, you've got to do your research, I guess, before you make a decision. But from my experience in working with multiple firms over the last few years, there are people who actually do kind of implement that 9 to 5 or 9 to 5:30 type of mindset or strategy at their workplace to help balance life. But you tend to find that in the suburban firms. It definitely not in the city. You know, you'd be lucky to be out by 6:30 really in the city. But yeah, there are definitely firms, and I'm not going to name anyone, but there are firms in the suburbs that really do actually religiously implement that. So it's just about finding the right fit.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I'll just see if there's any other questions that I possibly have missed. And we probably will finish up just on time, really. All right. I don't have PR, but I have got my law degree back in 2015 in Hong Kong. Should I be bothered with the summer clerkship? If I didn't do well back then, but I have been great in grades in my Priestley subjects, waiting for my COVID visa to go through. At the moment, I'm on a bridging visa, on the visitor visa. So that was the first question about summer clerkships, and the other one was about regional work, which I think we've talked about, that it's important to also, keep your eyes open and your options open for that as well. Yeah. Would not having PR, is that an issue?
Yeah, in short, yes, it is. Because you can't secure permanent work because your stay in Australia is not guaranteed. The period of time is not guaranteed. You know in the back of your mind that you're on a bridging visa that's going to give you your permanent residency. There's no paper that actually outlines that that's going to happen. So unfortunately, as unfortunate as it is, until you've actually got your permanent residency, it's very difficult for you to be able to secure work. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone just asked about networking in COVID. How do you do that?
Well, Jason, you'd be a good one to answer this one. It's like this.
Yeah. Zoom coffee. I in my role with the Law Institute, I organise for suburban young lawyers to have a monthly catch up with drinks, and we do things like trivia, things like that. So being able to network that way is really great. But otherwise, if you're looking for job prospects and that sort of thing, then inviting someone over LinkedIn, for example, to have a Zoom meeting, or a Skype meeting or whatever it is a good idea. But yeah, at the moment we can't physically go and visit a lot of people, but I definitely think make use of the technology if you can.
Yeah, and I think kind of just checking in with how people are travelling as well during COVID. So kind of being aware of that, especially when people were doing home education, homeschooling for their kids, and lots of chaos and finding kind of a good time. Perhaps it suits that person too, just being cognizant of that. I think that brings us to an end. So one last words of wisdom from each of you. What would be your one point for each and every person to take away today?
I think one of the I guess themes has been trying to find work as a graduate and actually landing your role. I think it's important for everyone to be confident about themselves. Like Pauline said, when you get knocked back, don't take it personally. It's not a personal attack on you. Be positive is also important. Build your networks, build your relationships, be a good person is important as well. And just look, there's something out there for everyone. Everyone's time comes at a certain time. Not everyone gets everything when they want. But be patient and be resilient, especially in this climate. What you get will come for you. So just be patient.
It's lovely. I like that. Pauline?
We talked about this the other day, and I think it's think laterally. Find the opportunities in the opportunities that you get. You will be surprised what you learn in working in an organisation that you never intended to work in, that you never thought you would pick up a job in an area, because it can open doors. You can meet new people. You can people have connections to other people outside. When they get to know you and trust you, they can be good referrals. You can look. Almost every organisation has connection with lawyers, or a larger organisation would have in-house law firm, lawyers. There are opportunities when I was at Swinburne, I thought I would come into being working in a project role, and it just happened to be that they were developing new regulations, so I got to work on a regulatory project. Who would ever have thought? It's about finding those opportunities wherever you find your first step, and don't just knock back a step because you think it may not be the right one, because it might just happen to be the right one for you.
Yeah, that's great advice. And Jason?
Yeah, I'm going to, I guess, mirror what both Pauline and Ravi have said, in that be confident in who you are. Imposter syndrome is a thing. And you know what? The skills that you've learnt to date, right, are going to hold you in good stead going forward. So be confident about that. And also do take the opportunities that come up, even if it's, something that you don't expect, and put yourself out there, get out of the comfort zone. I'm not the most outgoing of people, but, when it comes to wanting to better yourself and trying to give yourself every opportunity in a competitive environment, you've just got to do it. Just put yourself out there. You are who you are, and you're good in your own individual way. So, use that to your advantage. It's a tough time now, but it's not always going to be like this, guys. So, get yourself set up, and, there'll be good things coming for you in the future.
Great. Thank you. I really, really appreciate all the feedback and all the very, very wonderful, valuable insights that you've all shared today. So a lot came out of the discussion. And I'm hoping that all the people that have been listening will be able to put some of that into play. Thank you so much for your generosity and time tonight. And I hope it's been a really, really valuable session. I've enjoyed it, and I've loved it. So thank you so much, Pauline, Jason, and Ravi.
Thanks, Susan. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.